So, oh, there is an echo. You're muted. Okay, let me.
Graduate students for postdocs. Make sure you.
How's that?
Without the microphone. Oh, they can't. Okay, cool. Even better. That's having to carry around two things. That's okay. This needs to stop. There we go. We're on a roll now. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about is searching for an academic conference, presenting structure or presentation structure and content, public speaking tools and tips, and then kind of what a PowerPoint slide should look like if you're using PowerPoint. And then of course, finally, the graduate student or graduate school, professional development awards, both for graduate students and postdocs. So that's what we're going to talk about. So first of all, where to start? If you want to get your feet wet with presenting at academic conferences, or you're gearing up to present at an academic conference, and you want to maybe do a trial run or test out your research on an audience, the best way to do that is to host through your department maybe a brown bag session. So during lunch, where you can have maybe faculty from the department, your other students, your classmates attend. You can give your research talk, kind of a pilot run, get the feedback, and then you're going to get yourself ready to start presenting at academic conferences versus just launching right in, right? Then you have the regional conferences, which when we look at travel awards and stuff and we're looking at funding, regional, even though there are some conferences that are out of the state of Texas that are considered regional, when we're looking at travel funding, regional is like within the state of Texas because Texas is large, right? But regionally, you're going to have like the Southwest region of the United States, the Northwest region, the West region, the East region. You know, there's so many regions depending on the organization that is hosting the conference. Yeah, hi, you can just scan to check in. So yeah, you can, so when you're looking at conferences, of course, you can look at regional, the national ones or the national organizations, and then the top tier would be the international conferences. And we will, as I'm going to be talking about later, we do provide funding for all travel to conferences. Doesn't matter if you're driving to Austin, you can still apply for a travel award. And like I said, I'll discuss all that stuff. So when you're looking at getting on the schedule to present at a conference, so you know that there's one coming up, maybe a faculty member, one of your faculty, a mentor, advisor has mentioned to you, I really think it's important that you present your research at XYZ conference. You want to make sure that you have enough time when you're searching for the conference, because submitting proposals to present at a conference is going to happen anywhere from 6, 8, 10 months out prior to the conference. So you want to make sure that you start looking, and your faculty advisor should be able to tell you, and this is usually when the proposals, the deadline is for, XYZ conference. So you want to start looking for those and making sure you're giving yourself enough time, because not only do you have to make sure you hit the deadline, but you need to make sure that your proposal is ready, your abstract, whatever you're having to submit is ready in time to submit to be considered. So then you have to think, where does your research belong? Where do you want to start? Oftentimes, students are not going to start with what we call like a plenary session, an oral presentation where it's just you presenting your research. Sometimes it's maybe better to start a little smaller. So or an introduction to presenting your research, which that's what I would consider more the poster presentation, where you're developing a poster, you're giving, in a sense, an elevator pitch about your research. And that's a nice way, because you're not, in a sense, getting up in front of a room of 20, 30, 40 people to give a presentation, which most people, I would say, since I also do a lot of sessions on public speaking, most people have some level of public speaking anxiety. So it might be good to start small. So poster presentations are a good way to do that, because at a time you're maybe presenting from anywhere from 1 to 3 judges. If you have people walking around, you can present to them as well if they ask about your research, but it's a nice place to start. So once, poster presentations are good. Student panels are nice because you're sharing your experience, but with a wide group of people. So sometimes the panels are going to be structured where you have the moderator asking questions, and sometimes each person will have a role. So they're going to be, in a sense, giving a general abstract about the research, and then you're going to have a Q&A from the audience. So that's a good way. Thematic panels are where it's your research aligns with maybe 2 or 3 other people's research. So you're on a thematic panel. Then we have the roundtables, which is normally in an academic setting or any conference setting. And I've never been to a session like this. I've been to more the panels or the one speaker or the poster. But the roundtables, like you have a room, you have a speaker at each table. And then instead of you moving, the audience actually moves from speaker to speaker. And then there's the gold standard. If your research gets selected to be a plenary speaker, where you are an individual, or maybe you're presenting, you co-authored a paper, co-authored research. Sometimes a lot of our students and postdocs will present with a faculty advisor or faculty member. Often, other times you'll be doing it on your own, maybe also, or with a classmate. So plenary sessions are kind of like I said, the gold standard. Now, as far as we're concerned in the graduate school, it doesn't matter in what venue or type of presentation you're giving. As long as you've been selected to a conference, you are eligible for funding based on a formula we have for a budget. And again, I'll talk about that. But just because you're doing a poster versus a plenary session or a panel doesn't mean you're going to receive less funding. So just keep that in mind as well. So the presentation length for academic research conferences is normally you have about 15 to 20 minutes to get your research, your talk. I liken it to a plane at an airport. You're taxiing onto the runway, you are cleared for takeoff, you go down the runway, you get it up in the air, leveled off, then your descent, then you land, and then you're back at the next gate in 15 to 20 minutes. So you have to get a lot of meat, a lot of information. So you need to make sure that your presentation is prepared and timed out very well, so that you make sure that all of the information that the people are there to hear, that they get. And sometimes researchers will get a little mired down in the minutia of like the data collection and the tools used and stuff, because for you, and you're doing your research, that part is very important, because that was a lot of painstaking work. Oftentimes you're creating the tools, the surveys, whatever you're utilizing to do the research, you're oftentimes creating that. And so for you, it's important. But for the people that are coming to listen to you, they're wanting to know, yeah, what we want to know a little bit about your data collection, your research collection, but we really want to know the results. Like what's the research and what came out of it? Like, how is this going to change the game in your field? So just keep that in mind. So presentation length, 10 to 15 PowerPoint slides maximum, approximately 60 to 90 seconds per slide. So you're kind of whipping through. And we'll talk about kind of, like I said, the development of the slides and what it looks like a little bit later. The title slide is going to be your first one. And I know this sounds very elementary, but it's good to kind of have a concept about how this lines out. So your title slide is going to be first, of course, title, your name, affiliation, so the University of Texas at San Antonio, probably your, of course, your department or your program. You're going to spend 30 seconds because this is just, you're introducing yourself. I'm from the University of Texas, San Antonio, XYZ department or program, and I'm in the art department, and then I'm in the XYZ graduate program. Try to avoid tales of personal motivation. You're not there to be a motivational speaker. So although background's important, they're really there to hear the research. So just focus on the research. Introduction slide, one slide that provides an overview of the topic. So you have title slide is 1, introduction slide is 2, kind of what I had. I had the title slide, and then this is what we're going to talk about. So introduction slide that provides an overview, again, 60 seconds, bullet points. This is the, in a sense, what you're doing is, think of it as the table of contents to a book. This is the story I'm going to tell you. Chunk, 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 chunk. Okay. Literature review or research background, depending on your discipline, right? Not everybody's going to be doing a literature review. Some people are simply going to be talking about the research background. So you're going to have 3 to 4 slides for this. Total is going to be 3 to 4 minutes. So 1 minute, 60 seconds per slide. You're first going to be having a theoretical overview or orientation, if applicable. And then the next 2 to 3 slides are going to be an overview of previous research. So an example, and make sure you're citing, right? If you're using other people's research or talking about other people's research as part of your presentation, make sure to cite it. You can do author, year, and then their relevant findings. When you're talking about the current study, this is now you're talking about one slide. This is where you're introducing the specifics of your research and identifying the research questions. So this is what, when you started, this was the goal. And then you're going to go into the methodology. As I mentioned before, this is the part where you could get mired down in the minutia and the details. And I'm not lessening the fact that this was a lot of work, but again, you need to remember why the people that are listening to you, why you're there and why they're there. Okay. First slide will be data, sample, and measures. Second slide will be analytic strategy. The variable section, you may want to have its own slide if applicable. It's up to you. So findings. When you're developing this slide and any presentation, so like for example, we host a 3MT competition, which is great practice for a research academic conference presentation, because it teaches you how to kind of really get to the gist of your research. But what I always tell students when we do the 3MT bootcamp is, although tables and charts and data are important, when you are a person sitting in a large auditorium or room, it's gonna be very hard because to fit all of the information on a table or chart, the words are gonna be really tiny, right, on the screen. So it's gonna be very hard. You know what it says, but it's gonna be very hard for people to follow as to, well, okay, what does all that mean? We kind of get it, but we can't read it. So it's hard to have people follow that. So it's better to have just words versus tables as far as when you're giving a presentation. Now, of course, a lot of people will use charts on poster presentations, but people are right up on the poster presentation, so it's a little different. Highlight important findings and then avoid putting up descriptive statistics. And again, findings 2 to 3 slides. Then we, findings are, of course, the meat of your presentation, and this is what the people are there to hear. So what was the results of your research? And then your conclusion slides, which is 1 to 2. The highlights, just as a reminder, these were the main points. The limitations of your research, we don't want to hear, like in general, they're not here to hear the drawbacks of your research. They're really here to listen to the findings. So don't focus on, well, I could have done this, I could have done that, I could do this in the future. It didn't go the way I thought, type of thing. Don't put the focus on anything negative. And then your future research. You can toss around, of course, 1 to 2 ideas on where your research could lead in the future. Okay. So now this is my wheelhouse as far as keys to public speaking. So we'll talk about like how to approach public speaking. First thing I want to ask, and people online can raise their hands as well. Is there anyone in here that has kind of you get a little nervous when you're getting up in front of a group of people to talk?
I do.
Yes? You? No? Yes? A little bit?
No, a little bit.
Does it depend on the size of, like, let's say you're getting up in front of 10 people, like in the classroom. You get nervous with that?
No.
No?
Actually, it depends on the content that I'm going to present.
Right, depending on how comfortable you are with it. Now, what if you're in a room with 40, 50, 60, 100 people and you're up there by yourself presenting? Then maybe a little more nervous?
For me, it depends on the people in the room.
Yeah. What if they're all strangers?
Yes, but
Yeah.
for
That
example,
worse?
in the last conference that I presented, I was talking about the theoretical framework, and one of the the assistants were specialists in that theoretical framework. That was very interesting to that question. And when I started that, I feel so lucky that he is in the room, but I feel nervous because she knows about this topic.
Sure. I totally get it. I totally get it. The decision makers, the people that you think are more knowledgeable than you are, right? Yeah.
But that point is very important that you mentioned that nobody in the rooms about the juries.
Yes, you always have to own the fact that you are the most informed person in the room because this is your research. Nobody else, including a faculty member, has done your research. That's why you were selected to present your research. You're the expert and you need to own that. The other piece of this is what I like to say is what I like to tell people when I'm speaking about public speaking anxiety or getting over your nerves is that the reality of the size of the room or the number of the people, it doesn't matter because you're still giving the same information. Doesn't matter if the room is empty or this room is filled. You're going to present the same. You're going to present the same information. And again, you're the expert. So you want to make sure to own that. So at that moment, you are the most informed person in the room and they're there to hang on every word you're saying because they want to learn from you. You're the star. You're the star of the show. Of course, you want to be prepared, as I kind of touched on that earlier. You don't want to put a presentation together day or 2 days or 3 days before. You want to make sure you're giving yourself enough time to make sure that the timing is right. The number of slides makes sense, that you're comfortable with the material, as you were saying. If you're not comfortable with not just the material, but how your presentation is lined out, that allows you opportunities to get tripped up. The more comfortable you are with the material, the more, the less anxiety you're going to feel, because it's like second nature to give the information. It is a little harder to speak off the cuff, you know, to look at a bullet point and then to talk about it. But I think enough practice is good, with one caveat, and that is when you are presenting, you want to make sure that you're not so rehearsed that you sound robotic or like you're reading a sheet. You want to sound very organic, very conversational. That makes it more enjoyable for the listener than if you sounds like you're speaking from a script. So rehearsed is good, comfortable is good, but you also need to be flexible in speaking. And what I mean by that is, if you were to give the presentation today or give the presentation a week from now, there'll be slight variations in your presentation or public speaking style, things that you say. The research is going to be the same, but the way you present might be a little different, simply because it's organic, it's conversational. Note cards are fine. Again, I have a caveat with that. Note cards are good if they have key points only to help keep you on track, right? So slide to slide, okay, these are the key points that I'm going to talk about, but they're just for a jumping off point. Do not have full sentences on your cards, because this is what you're going to end up doing. You're going to just start reading, because it's also a comfort thing. You're going to get locked into the words and you're not going to look at your audience, and then you're going to start reading your presentation. So note cards are fine as reminders. If you could just use that to check in. Practice in front of a mirror or your pet. My pets would not be good for that, because they don't like basically sit in one place. If they are, they're asleep, so it doesn't do much good. But you can, if you present in front of a classmate or a friend, just give a nice run through. The mirror, it's okay, but I would say if you can get it to another person, or like I said, the brown bag idea is a great way to kind of get your feet wet and to see how the material is received. And then the speaking slower than you normally would. Again, this is an anxiety piece. Is the more nervous we are, the faster we talk. And additionally, we tend to speak faster conversationally than we should in a presentation. So you want to make sure that although you don't want to speak at a snail's pace, like with a pause between every word, you can pace yourself. The other thing that pacing allows you to do is, if you slow down how you're talking, your brain has time to process what the next words are going to be. And so it limits the number of placeholders, which is the you know, the like. You can't ever erase them totally. You have to be a professional speaker, when it's somebody you hear on the radio, right, or an actor, to keep that from happening. It's going to happen. But if you slow down and you really think about what you're going to say, rather than a placeholder, maybe you put in just a little pause. It sounds odd, and as you're learning or practicing public speaking, it's going to feel weird. But it's not just absolute silence. It's just slowing down your speech enough to allow for a pause so you can think about what's next. I mean, the same thing goes for me. If I slow down my speech, there's very few and ums. If I start speaking quicker, like for example, okay, well, I have this much time to get through the information, so let's talk a little bit quicker, and I just happen to talk fast anyway. Then the uhs and the ums come. So, and it's a good thing to practice. See, okay, how far can I get without using a placeholder? The more practice, of course, the old adage, practice makes perfect. The more practice you get with public speaking, the better you're gonna be. Speak in an engaging way. You remember, you own the room, you're the expert. You want to sound interesting. So you want to sound interesting to your audience, and you want to sound interested in what you're presenting. Remember, this is your research. If you don't sound interested in your research, nobody else is going to be interested in your research. So you need to make sure interesting and interested. Do not read the slides. If you need to glance to look at the next point because you want to try, like for example, this room, I don't have a laptop to look at. There are a lot of plenary sessions that you have the laptop in front of you. I recently presented at a conference in June. I was out of 2 days of full agenda of speakers, maybe 45 minutes each. I was one of two people. I was one of two people that stepped from behind the podium, used the clicker, and did not read my presentation. These were people in leadership in graduate schools all over the state of Texas, yet I was the only one, along with one other dean, I think from UNT, that did not. Step away, because then you're not going to read the screen. Because every single one of those people read the screen, they knew it. And I'm like, this is going to be so long if all these people read their presentations. And that's what the audience is feeling. They want to engage with you. So speak in an engaging way, do not read the slides, make eye contact. It's important. It's a learned skill. It's easy in a room full of, I'm looking at Cynthia and I'm looking at you four. It's easier to make eye contact. Now, if you have a room full of, this room is full, right? There is no way that I'm going to be able to hit every single person's line of sight. Many I will be able to get. The best way to do it is to, in a sense, you want to scan the room so that it feels to the people out there that they are making eye contact with you. In reality, there's only maybe a few people here and there. But if you gravitate to one person, like as you're scanning the room, it does feel like there's that engagement from you. It's a learned skill to do that. Initially, when people get up to public speak, at the beginning, you're nervous, right? You have the anxiety. You focus in on one person. That's because it feels safe. Then I can totally block out everybody else. So I end up giving, what's your name, sir? Hamlet? Hamid, sorry. So I'm giving my presentation to Hamid alone because I feel safe here. And I end up, my body language is standing directly here. So I am totally ignoring this entire side of the room. At least here, I am fairly close to the other gentleman in the room, but I'm still focused here because it's more comfortable than opening yourself up and being a little bit more vulnerable and kind of scanning the room. Again, it's a learned skill, something you can practice. You just don't want to sound, you don't want to look very unnatural when you do it, like this, because it is almost like watching it. When you start, it's like watching a tennis match or a sprinkler in a yard is kind of what you're doing, but you need it to be a little more natural. Again, practice. This I talked about earlier. You want to make sure it's organic, not robotic, not rehearsed, not so rehearsed that it sounds rehearsed. I've seen this, and I don't know if any of you have, where someone's presenting to an entire audience and they do this. Do not turn your back to the audience. And then, oh, right, be yourself. I've seen it. It's so uncomfortable. It's so embarrassing. I'm embarrassed, I'm embarrassed for the person because they're now presenting to the screen. They're not presenting to the people. So as I said, if you're in a room where you're wanting to step away, you don't want to use note cards, it is okay to quickly look at the screen because for me, it's impossible to memorize a 45-minute presentation. Maybe 15 to 20 minutes is a little bit easier, but you do need to see, okay, well, this is the next slide, making sure you're on track. And I'll look at key points to make sure I'm getting it. But once I see what I'm going to talk about, I turn right back around and I don't usually turn my full self. It's just an adjustment to quickly glance. Don't turn your back to your audience fully and then start presenting to the screen. The other piece is be your most authentic self. Be the best version of yourself. If you are comfortable in who you are and you use your authentic self to present, you're gonna feel less anxiety, you're gonna have more fun, and the audience is gonna have more fun. If you're a funny person, generally, like you have that observational humor that you can add in, and that is part of who you are, and it does not detract from the presentation, sure, include it, it's fine. If you have a little anecdotal thing that fits with your research and it's humorous and you can get the audience laughing, great, because if someone laughs, people laugh, they're gonna be even more engaged. But if it does not work for your presentation, nor does humor work for you in an in an observational way, don't do it. Just stay away from the humor. You have to know. Ask other people, am I funny? And then if they say, yes, then you can incorporate it. If they say, well, you tell great jokes, maybe that. Or stay away from it. Okay, so when you're looking at the presentation, actually the structure. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind. First is technology and confidence. Now, thankfully, with younger generations, that's less and less and less and less and less likely. But technology failure is still a real thing. Like just before you all came in, we were trying to figure out how I couldn't pull my presentation from my USB drive and pop it onto the screen. So then I could plug this thing back in. They have one USB and they don't have Teams. So I couldn't pull it up on SharePoint. And maybe I could have, but I didn't have a lot of time. So now it wasn't a technology failure, but that was a technology challenge. So I always recommend that you get to where you're presenting early to make sure that you have enough time. That everything's working well, and then if something isn't, they can fix it. That's the same thing happened in my that presentation, same one. I couldn't, the laptop locked up at the very beginning. So I had to waste time. So I started having people do like the birds up, took a picture, asked a couple questions. I started into my presentation because I was familiar with it and I introduced myself. And then by all the time that was done, it was back up and running. It's a real thing. So maybe not technology incompetence, but technology failure. It is a real thing. There is something called death by presentation or death by PowerPoint, where you're trying to get so much into a very short period of time that you have a massive amount of slides and you're just like whipping through it. So instead of the 15 to 20 that I recommended, you have like 30 to 40. Because you feel, and then there's like all the tables and the charts and everything. You want to make sure it's everything, including the presentation, is going through at a nice pace. So keep it down to the recommended amount. Make sure it's readable. So the best practice is the smallest sub bullet. Like if you have like sub bullets and stuff, the smallest sub bullet should be no less than 18-point font. Also, for a slide, Arial is the best, easiest to read. Maybe Calibri, but when you start getting into things like even Times New Roman, the letters kind of get all clustered together. So Arial, Calibri is good. Arial's the best. Grammar's needed, but just remember, mainly spelling. Make sure you don't have misspelling, but you also don't want to have complete sentences. So grammar, like the structure of a sentence, should not be an issue. Period, punctuation should not be an issue because we're talking about short, quick bullets that you will then expound upon. Consistency is important, mainly of the structure. So if you have a template you're using for 1 slide or 5 slides, make sure that template continues and you're not changing templates from slide to slide, because then it gets a little, what's the word? It is, well, obnoxious is one word, but it's distracting to the audience. If you want a university template, which we recommend, you can contact me. I have 2 different ones, and I can send you both of them. You can make your choice. There's a very standard one, and then there's the whole, bold beginnings UTSA template, and you're welcome to use either, just because they're standard university templates. So you can contact me for those. Does anyone know why you would avoid red and green on the same slide? People that are colorblind it causes a problem. So yeah, I had no idea until I was informed of that. So try to avoid red and green on this slide. I know that's Zoom. That's Zoom. And as I said, use the university PowerPoint. So again, if you would like the university PowerPoint, just shoot me an email and I can give that to you. The audience, attack of the audience is, I think this is what one of you were talking about, is when they start asking questions that you can't answer. And then or you have a belligerent audience member, you have an audience member that just won't stop asking questions. What do you do, right? So it rarely happens, first of all. The best thing to do if you need to move on from one person, that's a great question. Let's address it. Let's talk afterwards. That's a great question. Afterwards, if you come up, give me your contact information. I'll reach out to you, because at some point you have a limited matter of time. So you need to make sure you're getting through the full like Q&A, and you're allowing people to talk, or someone's interrupting you in the middle of your presentation, ask a question. Normally, I will set the expectations at the beginning, whether it be a presenter that I'm moderating for you all or myself. Well, we're gonna do the presentation for X amount of time. Let's say 15 to 20 minutes, and then after the 15 to 20 minutes, I'll open it up for a question and answer. So that sets the expectation at the very beginning. Sometimes the moderator will do that for you. Oftentimes you'll have a moderator. Sometimes they'll do it, but if not, set the expectations so you don't get that attack of the audience thing happening. The other thing is, which I've also heard, is when someone tries to answer a question that they really don't fully know the answer, but they try to fudge and make it sound like it's real. If you don't know the answer, just be clear. I'm not certain of the answer. I can't answer your question right now, but let me look into that further and I'll get back to you. Rather than just saying, I don't know. Okay, so free money, right? There are strings, just a couple. They're pretty easy strings, honestly. The maximum award for either, are there postdocs in here? All of your graduate students? Okay. So we'll just, and I don't know for postdocs. Postdocs is the same amount, award amount, pretty much the same guidelines. But funds can help you cover travel, registration, fee, food, and hotel. If you are attending a virtual conference, we will still pay registration. So we will not give you $750 free dollars. There is a formula based on your travel budget. So if you're attending virtually and registration fee is $200 and you meet the criteria, you'll be awarded $200 to cover that cost. You will not get an extra, $450, right? Or $500, whatever it is. Award formula is the total travel cost minus outside funding. So if you're receiving, let's say, a scholarship from the conference, if you're receiving funding from your department, if you're receiving funding from your faculty member, those need to be deducted from the total cost of your travel. And then we award you X amount of money after that. How the process works is your department or your college has the cost center number where they can go in and pull the money based on your travel costs. More often than not, the costs up front will need to come from you, and then you are fully reimbursed. Depends on the college department how they handle travel. So I'm telling you, there is a good chance that you do not get the money up front. Or the other option is the department, what they do is they want you to apply for the travel award. They will give you the money up front. They'll cover the cost, and then they'll use the award to offset the costs they provided to you. So I would talk to your department and find out exactly, so you are clear before traveling, exactly what is going to come out of your own pocket and when. Funding is available for 2 rounds, fall and spring, and then 1 in the summer. So the first deadline in the spring is coming up actually this week. The next one will be April. So it's always around I think the 1st. So I think it's February 1st, April 1st, and then I want to say July 1st is the summer. We only award, or we only notify students of award 1 time post the deadline. So we cannot, if you were to apply, let's say today, you'll find out your award after the deadline. We can't just, we don't award you in real time. But you will get a formal email, congratulations, you've received X amount of money, that you'll have, the department and college, or excuse me, the college, your college is notified as well. A student or postdoc can only receive 1 GSPD, Graduate Student Professional Development Award, per academic year. Academic year is fall, spring, summer. So we are in the second of 3 semesters for this academic year. You can receive 1. Even if you received only $200, you can't apply again to get the additional funds that go up to $750. $750 is simply a maximum amount on 1 award. Okay. The other thing that we're putting into place per the dean is that there's an extra piece if you're awarded a travel fund. We want you to also present your research here at UTSA. So whatever research you presented, we're going to want you to take part in a poster competition, which we offer every spring during Graduate Student Appreciation Week in April, or we want you to participate in the 3MT in the fall. I believe it was mentioned, Cynthia can correct me,
Yeah.
But you have a year from your award to complete one of those requirements. So obviously, if you did a poster presentation, that's going to be the easiest because you just use the same poster, right? If you gave a plenary session, 3MT might be the way to go. Does anyone not know what the 3MT is? If you don't know what the 3MT is, just raise your hand. Okay, you all do know? Has any of you, I mean, I'm so horrible with faces and I'm the one that manages the 3MT. Have any of you done it? You did? That's why you look familiar. I mean, yeah, it's hard. So tell us about your experience with the 3MT.
Yeah, it was cool. You just have to, you do a 3-minute thesis. Has to be very slick and, concise. But yeah, it was a good experience.
Would you do it again?
Yeah.
Yeah. The nice part, and with both, there's an opportunity to win a financial award. With the 3MT, we're starting something new this year. So the next one will be, of course, next fall. It's only once a year. But there's an added incentive for your departments. So let's say you were to win, first place is $1,200. Second place is $750. Third place is $500. People's Choice is $200. If you were to win any of those slots, your department receives a matching amount that they can use to fund travel for students to go to conferences. So if you win $1,200, your department gets $1,200. So it is incentivizing the departments and the faculty to get their students to participate in the 3MT. So, and it's a good deal. It really is. You get $1,200 in pocket, and they get $1,200 to use for their own travel, but for students. So it's a win-win. That's it. Just under the wire. Do you all have any questions for me based on the information? Before I go on into that or you answer your questions, if you can please fill out our survey, you can just use your phone, scan the QR code, and there's just a couple questions. So if you can do that for us as well. Those of you online can do the same, obviously. So what questions do you all have?
This is the application for June.
The GSPD application for graduate, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
so
it's
it used-
open now or?
It is open now. The deadline, like I said, this deadline is February 1st for this round of funding. The next one will be April 1st. Yeah. And you can also apply after, just not a lot of time, but if you forget, let's say your travel is April 2nd